For many years in a row, Aiden was ruled by a real tyrant. He publicly executed not only the entire enemy army, but even their children, regardless of their age. The mad ruler ruthlessly killed even his supporters. The empire had never known such a ruthless monarch in its entire existence. For a long time, the capital was a city of silence, horror, and bloodshed. In this era of survival lived a duke who had two beloved daughters. Ruby was the older daughter. The younger was named Cullen. When Rubina was 15 years old, she made a decision regarding her sister. She loved her sister very much and decided to give her the right to lead the Luxen family. But no sooner had she announced her decision to her relatives, disaster struck. "Sister, I have decided to take all the lace for myself because it looks so much better on me," exclaimed Kalina. "Ruby, Kalina, I have received word from the capital. Your parents have been accused of insulting the Imperial family. They have been invited to the capital and killed there," shouted the girl's agitated uncle. As Rubina was taking her parents' bodies from the Imperial palace, she was finally able to find out why her family members were killed. The pearls they had provided to the Emperor turned out to have one small flaw. Father tried to protect us. He took his family far away from the capital, but he refused to abdicate. No matter how hard he tried to save us, his attempts shattered. I will never forgive those involved in my parents' deaths," Rubina thought to herself. 5 years flew by almost imperceptibly. As Kalina turned 18, Rubina decided to give her the Luxen family signet ring. "Rubina, have you really decided to hand over your family's title to your younger sister? Do you want to give up your inheritance?" The invited guests were surprised. "Of course, I am extremely interested in your advice, however. I will have to give the title to my sister since I plan to go to some monastery. And by the way, I was planning on handing over control to my sister even before my parents died," Ruby replied. "Sister, wake up. Stop pretending to be asleep. I can see your eyes twitching. And I know why you chose the Rutel Monastery in the first place," Kalina said in a loud whisper and shook her sister by the shoulder. "At that convent, you can have fun and eat to your heart's content for the rest of your life. There are absolutely no lessons there. Plus, our family donated a huge amount of money there, so no one will forbid you from sleeping as much as you want." "You misunderstood everything. I'm not going there to enjoy a quiet life. There are other reasons for that," replied Rubina to her sister. "And why don't you want to stay here with me? I'll be very homesick without you," Kalina exclaimed and clung tightly to her sister. "Oh, calm down, will you? We'll write letters to each other. You won't notice me leaving. Callie, I only have one thing to ask of you. Don't think about something like revenge. Just live. I'll loaf and eat as much as I want, and you take care of the family. Callie, let's forget about everything and just enjoy life because it's so short." Life at the convent suited Ruby completely. She was free to do whatever she wanted. The girl's everyday life was brightened by letters from her sister. In the letters, Kalina often told about the situation of the Empire, which was getting worse every day. Kalina wrote about the tyrant emperor who thought he was eternal because he bathed in the blood of a baby. He frequently raised taxes, so even the nobles could go bankrupt before long. Shaking her head at such madness, Ruby wrote nothing about the madman in response. Another 4 years passed. "Sister Rubina, it's not bedtime. A guest has arrived to see you. Please go to the chapel immediately," shouted the nun, shaking Rubina by the shoulders. Entering the chapel, Rubina saw her younger sister, Kalina. In all these 4 years, they had never met once. "I'm ready now. It's time for that bastard to repent of everything and say goodbye to life. However, it is possible to reverse the sequence and kill him first. My dear sister, help me in this," Kalina exclaimed. "Let's deal with the tyrant together. I really need your help at the moment. I can't do it without you." Ruby gave the title to her sister, hoping that by doing so she could save her. She didn't want Kalina to avenge anyone by risking her life. Ruby guessed that she would have to protect her sister and the title at some point. So for all 4 years, she had been practicing in the backyard of the convent. Rubina never expected that her sister would one day come to the monastery with a plan to overthrow the tyrant. The girl had dreamed of revenge for years, so she gladly agreed to her sister's proposal. My birth name is Rubina. My new name is Crystal. As a former member of Duke Luxen's family, I swear that my sword and arrows will be aimed at your enemies, and my shield will protect you. Until my last breath, I will love and honor you. Do not betray my faith in the oath you have taken. The price of loyalty is sweet, and the fruit of betrayal is poisonous. Your earthly shell and your soul, faithful to the god, it all belongs to me now. I will give you a new surname, and both your names will be mine, Kalina said in a loud voice. Ruby Crystal von Aschelion is now your new name. Pick up your sword and follow me. I will gladly follow you. I promise you that I will give my firstborn son to the service of the god. For that, I would ask his blessing in our battles, said Ruby, and kissed the sword of the Cullens. The group following Kalina was quite a serious force. Her army was made up of nobles and people of the south who had long been persecuted by the tyrant. The monks from the monastery that followed Ruby had also added to the group. The Cullen army did not go straight to the center, but slowly moved north and east. In the east, Count Dominan hung a white flag and opened the gates of his castle. To prove his surrender, he sacrificed his best swordsman, his son, Dante. Thanks to Count Dominant's surrender, the Cullen army gained the east without bloodshed. Shortly afterward, it marched to the west of the empire. A small battle took place there. Ruby managed to hit almost all of the enemies. The only one who escaped her arrow was the main defender of the west, Feltharg Kadrik. Ruby only managed to wound him once in his right eye. Feltharg grabbed Rubina and plowed her to the ground. "Because you took away my eye, you will die today," screamed Feltharg and stuck his sword into the girl's shoulder. After a while, Feltharg and Rubina had to sit down at the negotiation table. Unfortunately, there is no surrender in our plans. You have decided that since you got the east so easily, there will be no problem with the west, said Feltharg. Sister, I was told you were wounded. You are fine. An excited Cullen burst into the meeting room. Upon seeing the girl, Feltharg froze in place in surprise. Ruby realized that they would be able to negotiate with him as well. What kind of asshole is that? As soon as he saw a beautiful girl, he immediately spread his tail like a peacock. Right now, he's our enemy with a powerful willpower. I thought he would make a good groom, but I guess I was wrong, Ruby thought to herself. Still, I'll have to get married someday. It's not good for a young girl to be alone. But let's not be in a hurry. Let's make Kalina empress first, and then I'll think about who I should marry. When the west, east, and south submitted to Kalina's army, it was time to advance to the capital of the empire. The capital, exhausted by the tyranny of the ruler, did not oppose the rebellion of the Duchy of Luxen. The inhabitants scattered flowers and welcomed the Cullen army with all their hearts. Without much trouble, the army passed through the gates and found itself in the very center of the capital. That same night, the final battle took place. The Imperial army was only enough for one night. Its incompetent fighters were busy escaping, and the tyrant himself surrendered without a fight. He fell by Cullen's sword. The very next day, Kalina became empress. Sis, I have a favor to ask of you. Kill the dragon for me. I want the empress throne to be decorated with dragon skin, said Kalina. Ruby had no choice but to comply. Rubina took 4 assistants with her and went on a dragon hunt. In a fierce battle, the dragon was eventually slain. Dante cut out the dragon's eyes and heart. Kalina eventually sat on a throne trimmed with dragon skin. She wore a crown with a dragon's heart on it. Kalina became the first empress of a great empire. By Kalina's side were always 3 subjects who served her wholeheartedly. They were honored with the titles of dukes and given lands. Dominant Dante of the Black Tulips was given the western lands. Feltar Kadrik of the Rose of the Iron Cross received the southern lands. Ruby Aschelion of Silver Lily received the infamous northern lands. Infected beasts were born there, and the people who lived there were former prisoners. Sis, since I trust you, I'm allocating you the northern lands specifically. I'm sure you'll be able to handle the people living there and protect my empire, said Kalina. Ruby didn't know what to say back to her sister. She wasn't thrilled about getting lands with a sad history. Be that as it may, Rubina still had to travel to the northern lands. She managed to re-educate the criminals, making them ordinary people. She taxed them and forced them to undergo military training. She also built a wall to protect them from monsters. When times were finally calm in the northern land, Ruby received a letter from the Empress. She was ordered to return to the capital. The capital, very much transformed under the rule of the Cullens. The state began to look like a true empire. Secular society finally began to flourish. To the people of the capital, Ruby was a cruel savage from the north. Sis, have you heard what people say about you? Some say you're over 2 meters tall and have 3 eyes. People say that if you put a dagger in your neck, it will immediately snap in half, said Kalina, and laughed out loud. I think I've figured it out. It was your majesty who spread all those rumors, said Ruby. Don't make it up. Don't I have anything better to do? I just told them a little about the difficult situation in the north so that they wouldn't forget how hard you're trying and be grateful to you. It's a strange rumor they've already started on their own, replied Kalina. Stay in the capital for a while, then the rumors will quickly disappear as well. It's still full of organizational problems. A lot of things have come together. I desperately need your help. Rubina really didn't want to stay in the capital, as she was currently in the process of finding her husband. She needed to give her first child to serve the gods and raise her second as a future duke and instill in him loyalty to the Empress. Ruby needed to find a man who would agree to have at least 2 children with her. Rubina asked her sister to provide her with a maid of honor who would pick up those parties where young people from social circles were present. Since Rubina did not like dresses, she attended parties in her usual military uniform. To begin with, Ruby attended a banquet given by the Marquis. All the unmarried young girls and boys attended it to show off their knowledge and talk about the state of the empire. Lately, Ruby had often thought of her grandmother. Many years ago, she had assured her granddaughter that she would surely meet a good and unambitious husband. He would be intelligent and handsome. Grandmother always asked Rubina to find a husband who would not damage her reputation and property. She needed to protect her credibility from careless suitors. As my grandmother used to say, I need a good man with good health who would help me conceive at least 2 children. Of course, a lot of good men died during the war, so there's not much choice now. Rubina thought to herself. The girl saw that men were afraid of her. Rubina was called the Queen of the Beasts of the North. She was considered a cruel killer who had no pity or compassion. Duchess, you have decided to honor us with your presence after all, said the Marquis of Libidor's wife, who approached. Because you came, our banquet is being taken to a new level, so I'm grateful for your visit. Since Rubina was tired of attending a banquet where the men were openly afraid of her, she decided to return home. Rubina loved walking around the night capital, so she decided to walk home. Everything happened exactly as I wanted it to, after all. Cullen not only ascended to the throne, but also took possession of the neighboring countries. She became a truly great empress. The speed at which it all happened is astounding, thought Rubina on her way home. Since the weather outside was pleasant, the girl decided to sit on a bench for a while and admire the night sky. You have no chance left to turn your back on marriage. Hear Rubina behind her. Turning around, Rubina saw a young man and a flustered girl. This girl is a real beauty, after all. The man next to her doesn't seem to be a member of an aristocratic family. His outfit is completely ordinary, noted Rubina to herself. Although he's dressed rather modestly, it doesn't spoil his beauty. If God really exists, and if he created not only this world but also angels, this man is definitely one of them. Get your hands off me! I don't remember allowing you to touch me! The man exclaimed and pushed the girl's hands away from him. He's certainly handsome, but he's not trained in manners, thought Ruby. Do you think I'll give in? I'll still make you mine, exclaimed the girl. I didn't come here for you at all. I'm looking for her. I'm pretty sure this is where she went. Where did she go? Said the man. Ruby hurriedly hid in the bushes. Who was the man looking for? Could it be her? But why would he want her? Still, Duchess Achelian has become a real laughing stock. She's gotten to the point where she's hiding in the bushes. Ruby thought to herself. If this young man is looking for me after all, it can only indicate one thing. I've gotten myself into something very tiresome. Does he really want to challenge me to a duel? But why? What have I done already? This man is handsome and has a sturdy build, but his temper is rather nasty. Grandmother asked me to choose a kind and unambitious man. A few days later, Ruby again ran into that handsome young man at another social banquet. This time he behaved quite differently. He looked like a real heartbreaker, before whose manners no girl could resist. Feldharg came over and noted that Ruby looked very good. Have you met this narcissist surrounded by girls? Feldharg asked. Rubina guessed that he was referring to the handsome man she had seen in the Imperial garden a few days ago. He was really shining today. Did you even manage to notice with your one eye how handsome he is? Ruby inquired. In case you've already forgotten, I lost that eye to someone. Now you're glad I can't see anything? Asked Feldharg in a hurt voice. No, I'm absolutely not laughing at you. I'm still ashamed in front of you for what happened. And I'm very curious. Who is this man? This is the first time I've seen him here. Maybe you know something about him? Asked Ruby. This young man is the grandson of Earl Graham. He is from a family that was close to the past emperor. Remember, during the Midnight Battle, his entire family surrendered and bowed to Cullen. She decided to keep them alive, Feldharg reminded. What's a little odd is that this man looks absolutely nothing like his grandfather. If I remember correctly, the Count has wheat-colored hair and brown eyes. He has absolutely no muscles. He's tall and flabby, noted Ruby to herself. The same man has silver-colored hair and completely black eyes. He is tall and broad-shouldered. The day the Count's family surrendered, we checked it out thoroughly. This man looks more like the illegitimate son of a tyrant. You're thinking it right. This man's name is Luamund Fen Lux Amel von Graham, and you should know that this name was the mark of the royal family, said Feldharg, greatly surprising the girl. Ruby didn't expect him to be able to read her mind. Luamund Graham is the last major relative of the previous emperor. More specifically, the last member of the Imperial family we destroyed. He is the only descendant of the Tyrant. Indeed, silver hair color and black eyes were the hallmarks of the Imperial family. But how did he survive? Why did my sister decide to keep him? It was ordered to kill everyone, even newborns, marveled Ruby. I also don't understand how come he ended up at a banquet organized by the Imperial Palace. We found out who he really is not too long ago. Also, this man of the house is a scholar. We decided to show them respect today and invited all the staff members, Feldharg explained. Ruby knew that the House of Scholars was a tall tower where a group of mad scientists devoted their entire lives to learning. Upon entering the House of Scholars, a person would give up their family name and take an oath that they would study until they died. Scholars were respected not only by the people, but also by the Imperial family. The scholars observed political neutrality. Upon ascending the throne, Cullen also decided not to touch the House of Scholars. She gave them complete freedom. I didn't know that such a place housed the illegitimate son of a tyrant. Now I see how he managed to survive, thought Ruby. I don't understand why you're not aware of all this at all. I've been sending you regular letters for several years telling you what's going on in the capital, said Feldharg in a hurt voice. If you had read the letters, you would know that by order of the Empress, a new administrative system is going to be set up. She wants to bring in scholars and take advantage of their knowledge. By pulling up the files of every scholar we learned of the tyrant's illegitimate son. And you didn't destroy him even after you found out who he really was? Are you not afraid he might cause you trouble? I believe there are people left who want to rebuild the former empire, said Ruby. You should understand all this yourself, replied Feltharg. Rubina guessed that with the help of the previous emperor's illegitimate son, her sister wants to ferret out all those who want to bring back the past system. Kalina allows Earl Graham's grandson to be near her, as she is not afraid of his growing power. Ruby noted that aristocrats who used to be on good terms with the Tyrant are constantly gathering around Luamund. It's a good thing I've managed to avoid meeting him so far. It's obvious that if I contact him, I'll get myself into a rather unpleasant story. And why does he keep looking at me with a look full of despair? Thought Ruby. But I shouldn't worry about that at all. Let my sister or her subordinates deal with the whole story. I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I've just turned 29. I should be looking for a husband. When I finally find a suitable groom for me, I will have an excuse to return home to the north. I don't want to linger in the capital. Absolutely everything about this place annoys me. Going to the garden, Ruby was again confronted by Luamund Graham and his charming companion. The girl again insisted that Luamund marry her. Today I shall certainly make you mine. I don't like seeing the pain on your face, but you leave me no choice. Screamed the girl and knocked Luamund to the ground. Falling on his back, the man groaned loudly. You know very well, don't you, that cooperating with our family is simply essential to Count Graham's plan. And you are aware that talk of marriage between us has been actively pursued by our families for several years now. So why won't you give in? I apologize for intruding on your conversation, but I would like to remind you that you should not be doing this on the grounds of the sacred Imperial garden, said Ruby. She couldn't help herself. The girl wanted to help Luamund despite his background. Please save me, asked Luamund. Duchess Ashelian. What a meeting. My name is Lysana. I am the daughter of Marquis Odile. And as you have already noticed, I am spending time here with the man I love. I was unaware of your lordship's presence, so I apologize. How beautifully she asked me to mind my own business and leave them alone, which is to be expected of a lady from a noble family. She knows how to tell a beautiful lie, after all, thought Ruby. But I can do something too, and I know for a fact that this girl's family were supporters of the former emperor. Marquis Odile's family had a long history, but after the overthrow of the Tyrant, they had to go into hiding. They were removed from central positions and downgraded in rank. Rubina was sure that Lysana and her family were working to restore the Ainos Imperial family. They had been much better off under the past emperor. Even after 5 years, Marcus Odile still hadn't submitted to Kalina. Kalina promised the Marcus that she would restore his title and also return the territories if he sided with her, but he remained adamant. The Marquis had to pretend that he was on the Empress's side, but everyone knew that was absolutely not the case. In time, the Marquis and Colleen managed to come to a temporary compromise. Duchess, I beg you very much not to tell anyone about our relationship. We are still a bit wary and reserved, said Lysana with a sweet smile. What is this girl talking about now? All I see from her side is aggression. It's immediately clear from Luamund's face that he's not thrilled with the situation. Thought Ruby. Whatever you say, but it seems to me that this gentleman doesn't share your point of view, said Rubina. Hearing the girl's words, Luamund asked for help again. But it can't be. We love each other. Look, Louise, because of your shyness, the Duchess has started to doubt our relationship, said Lysana with resentment in her voice. Luamund broke out of the girl's arms and hid behind Ruby's back. Louis, honey, how can you do this to me? Asked Lysana in a voice trembling with anger. I suggest you calm down and end our communication. It will be better to continue the conversation tomorrow afternoon. For now, I will help a member of Count Graham's family get home. Ruby said in a calm voice. She didn't want to take part in a possible scandal. The way she says it calmly shows that she has power here. But after all, I'm the one who should be by Luamund's side. I can't accept having a murderer from the north in my place right now. Lysana thought irritably. "Duchess, you can rest assured that I will never forget what you just did," screamed Lysana. "If I did something wrong, you can tell Duke Feltarg about it. I'm sure he'll help you deal with the situation." Rubina decided to turn the problem with Lysana over to Feltarg. She had no time to deal with gossip and squabbles. "And now you can let me go. This is my farewell," said Ruby to Lumond. "Please don't leave me. Marry me," asked Lumond. "He's crazy," surprised Ruby thought to herself. "She must be wondering why I'm making such a statement after our second meeting. But what can I do? I have to at least do something to survive this time. I need to stick close to this woman," thought Luimond. "I refuse to die this time, too. I know for a fact that she is the only one who can save me." Count Graham not only swore allegiance to the tyrant, but also offered him his daughter. This resulted in the birth of the tyrant's illegitimate son and the count's blood relative, Luimond Graham. The earl's daughter was expected to become a duchess, but she was poisoned after the birth of her son. The first prince constantly threatened young Luimond with reprisal. Eventually, Luimond chose the life of a debauchee, showing that he did not want the throne. However, the first prince was not appeased. He ordered his knights to kill all of his father's illegitimate children. Luimond thought his life was over, but suddenly he woke up lying on the ground in the emperor's garden. A short while later, Luimond realized that he had somehow unknowingly traveled back in time. He promised himself that this time he would definitely survive. In his second life, Luimond swore his loyalty to the first prince, but it did not save him. Luimond died time after time, no matter what he did. At this point, he was already living his eighth life. Luimond decided to lock himself up in the scientist's house, thus keeping himself alive. But this plan, too, eventually failed. One day, Luimond was dragged to the new empress, intending to make her a concubine. The empress looked at him like a predator at a rabbit. It was clear she was up to something. Luimond decided for himself that he needed to find a man to save him. Luimond needed someone the empress would trust and listen to his opinion. He needed someone who was in the empress's esteem. While researching the empress entourage, Luimond learned about her older sister Ruby. She was the only person who could influence Kalina. Luimond realized if he married Ruby, it was unlikely that the empress would take him in. She would not take her sister's husband away from her. "I need 3 years. After that, we can divorce you. On top of that, I know that you made a blood oath. You need to give your firstborn to serve the god. I can help you with that," said Luimond to the girl. "I know that many men are simply afraid of you, so it will be extremely difficult for you to find a candidate to be your husband and the father of your children." "How do you know all this?" Ruby snatched up her sword and put it to Luimond's neck. No one knew about the blood oath she had taken before the battle. Only her sister had this information. "Am I really going to die again? In my previous lives, I was constantly killed by Dukes Dominant and Feltarg. Now I will die at the hand of Duchess Achillean," Luimond thought fearfully. "How long can I go on? I don't want to die anymore. I don't know what to do to save my life anymore. I've already tried every possible option." Bitter tears flowed down Luimond's cheeks. "Why are you crying?" Ruby asked. Luimond answered her that he was sad to die by her sword. "But if you don't want to die, then be honest with me and tell me the whole truth about how you knew about the oath," said Ruby. "I heard it from my grandfather planning treason." Luimond lied. "Since you know your grandfather is planning treason, why did you ask me to marry you?" asked Ruby. "Yes, I am aware that my grandfather is planning treason, but I am not interested in a ruined country. I am loyal to Her Majesty the Empress, so I want to avoid a coup," Luimond replied. "But you can avoid it anyway. You can simply refuse to help your grandfather. Why would you want to marry me?" inquired the girl. "I will reveal all the details of my grandfather's plot and endeavor for the good of our marriage with all care and sincerity. I will do anything to help you, whatever you ask, and I will never fall in love with you or be a burden to you," Luimond promised. "You and I will make a contract. Our marriage will be arranged. I promise to stay out of your life." "What's he talking about?" thought Ruby with disgust. The girl sacredly believed that newlyweds should be faithful to each other. Why is he suggesting to her that she should live a free life? If I understand you correctly, you're suggesting that we stay out of each other's lives and act like we're not married. Are you planning to get yourself another woman besides your wife? Ruby clarified. No, you misunderstand me. I promise to be faithful to you. As long as we are married, I won't look at other women. Besides, I don't want to have children out of wedlock, such as I am myself, answered Luan. According to her vows, Ruby's first child was to serve the god for 20 years. The second, she wanted to make an heir who would devote himself to the empire and the empress. Having children with a tyrant's illegitimate son was not in her plans. However, Ruby realized that it would be quite difficult for her to find a husband because of her reputation. Luan was built well enough, and they could very well have 2 children in 3 years. Your lordship, could you please stop scrutinizing me? Under your gaze, I'm getting very embarrassed, said Luan in a trembling voice. There were many female gazes directed at him at the banquet, but he only became embarrassed after I cast my gaze on him. Maybe he's afraid of me too, Ruby thought. All right, I accept your offer. Rubina hid her sword in its scabbard. Luan was very pleased with the girl's answer. But I have one condition for you. Come to me in 3 nights. I will see if you and I can conceive a child. Make a baby? What are you talking about now? Asked a blushing Luan. You said yourself you know about the vow I made. Basically, I don't have to marry. I just have to bear at least 2 children. If I get married, there will be less rumors. But overall, I don't need to get married, Rubina explained. If you really want us to get married, you have to prove to me that you and I can conceive a child. I want children, not marriage, so I'll meet you in 3 days. 3 days later, Ruby released almost all of her servants and waited for Luan. She doubted very much that he would not be afraid and come. The butler entered Rubina's study and reported that a black carriage had secretly left the house of the Marquis Odile's family and headed for the Earl of Graham's estate. Ruby also decided to go to Earl Graham's estate. As she approached the Count's house, she heard a man scream. It came from one of the bedrooms on the 2nd floor. Ruby decided to sneak into the bedroom where the scream was coming from. Let go of me! Didn't I tell you what I'm against? Luan shouted. That's what I thought Ruby as she watched what was happening in the room. You're going to marry her sooner or later anyway, so why are you stalling? Exclaimed the Count. All this time, I thought this lady was trying to woo me on her own initiative, but you, grandfather, were behind it all. Are you so hungry for power that you are willing to sell me out? Luan asked. Louis, dear, how many times do you have to be so stubborn? Am I really that disgusting to you? Why are you making me wait so long? Asked Lysana, standing against the wall. The girl walked over to Luan and gently touched his face. Shut up. I have no reason to be with you, replied Luan to the girl. Stop being capricious. Even though you're my grandson, I won't hesitate to send you to meet your mother if you suddenly get in my way, shouted the Count. Will this life be cut short as well? Will I die at the hand of my own grandfather this time? Will I ever be able to get out of this closed loop? Luan thought irritably. Suddenly, the bedroom window shattered into small pieces. Through the broken window, Ruby entered the room. The Count demanded of the girl that she introduce herself. Well, I will satisfy your curiosity. My name is Rubina Ashelian. I am the Duchess of the Northern Lands. How did you get here? Luan wondered. I came to rescue you, my future husband, said Rubina and held out her hand to Luan. Future husband? What does all this mean? What kind of marriage to a duchess? This is the first time I've heard such a thing. And how dare you enter my estate unannounced? The Count exclaimed. The Count ordered his guards to take his grandson away to another room. He was sure that the Duchess would not be able to handle his guards after all. She was a simple knight with little skill. It had always seemed to the Count that Duchess Ashelian had only gained the public's recognition and respect because she was the Empress's elder sister. He was sure that without her sister, she was worthless. And what should I do if the guards do decide to attack me? I'm not going to fight them, am I? Ruby thought to herself. Lumen clung tightly to the girl's arm. He was afraid that she would give up her intention of taking him with her as soon as she saw the Count's guards. "Didn't I tell you I came to rescue you?" Ruby asked Lumen. She took off her cloak and threw it over his shoulders. Lumen noted to himself that in his 7 previous lives, no one had treated him with such kindness. What a hard life for him to live. I've only seen him a few times, and each time he's been in a bad situation, thought Ruby. "We apologize, your lordship, but the gentleman will now be under our supervision," said the Count's servants. "From now on, anyone who touches my fiancé must be prepared to be sacrificed to the monsters," shouted Ruby, snatching her sword. The servants froze in place in a stupor. Rubina helped Lumen to his feet. "He is very tall, after all, and his body is well built," the girl remarked to herself. "How dare someone take my grandson at will? He is not allowed to leave without my permission. He belongs to House Graham, and to me in particular," shouted the Count. "Count, is your grandson really some object that has an owner? And if so, he is part of the Imperial family from now on. Soon, he will belong to Her Majesty," said Ruby. "Count Graham, do you realize what a grave sin you are committing by trying to take possession of the Empress's property? Does that mean you covet power equal to Her Majesty's? The estates, territories, and all the servants in the Empire belong to Her Majesty. Can't I take for myself what belongs to my sister?" "Countess, what kind of nonsense are you talking now? Luamond, get away from her. You will come with me," said the Count, and took a step towards his grandson. Ruby whistled loudly. Several dozen arrows immediately flew towards the Count. "My men are outside right now, so I would not advise you to make any rash decisions. And I'll tell you again, your grandson will soon become my lawful husband. So don't do anything else stupid," said Rubina. "Is everything going to be okay now?" asked Luamond to the Duchess. "I mean, are you sure that my grandfather will not retaliate? I am afraid he will declare Her Majesty to have trespassed on something that does not belong to her. According to custom, nobles have every right to their property and inheritance. It is enshrined in law. There is a high probability that the Empress will be accused of trespassing on someone else's property. Therefore, you had better leave me." "It will be fine. I'll take care of all the matters, so don't worry," replied Ruby. "I noticed that all the way from the county you haven't stopped hiccuping. Is there anything I can do to help you with that?" "There is nothing in the carriage to stop the hiccups. Is she really going to kiss me?" a blushing Luamond thought, and hiccuped fearfully again. "I've been kissed countless times in past lives, but this is the first time I'll be kissed in this one. I don't understand what you're embarrassed about at all." Ruby was coming Luamond against the wall of the carriage. Luamond held his breath in consternation. He hadn't expected their relationship to progress so rapidly. "So, are you relieved?" After a while, the girl returned to her seat. Luamond noted with surprise that the hiccups had passed. "One of my subordinates was eaten by a monster because of the hiccups, so I don't like that sound. It annoys me," Rubina admitted. "If you think about it that way, this girl is pretty amazing. We're not married yet, but she already calls me her husband all the time. And I never would have thought she'd come to rescue me. I hope she doesn't regret her decision," thought Luamond. "I see you have brought a guest at this late hour," the Empress's maid of honor remarked. Ruby was surprised to see her in the hallway of the manor. She was sure the maid of honor had returned to her home. "Well, since that is the case, I will prepare a hot bath for you. Follow me," said the maid of honor to Luamond. The maid of honor looked at Rubina judgmentally. Before this, no male representatives had ever come to their house other than Duke Feltharg. "You shouldn't look at me like that. Take him as a mere guest. We are not yet in the relationship you think we are." Ruby began to justify herself. "Not yet, but you plan to be," clarified the maid of honor. Ruby regretted starting this conversation. She should have kept quiet. "I am now certain that in this life I will surely survive. Somehow, miraculously, I managed to get into the Duchess's house," thought Luamond, lounging in the bathtub. If we talk about the original plan, I wanted to appear in front of her as a person from the House of Scholars. I wanted to talk about the future while pretending to see it. But how come she had to rescue me from my grandfather's house? So what am I supposed to do now? Today I can attract her with my body, but what next? I remember exactly why I had to get to this manor today. But there's no need to get discouraged ahead of time. Let's hope we can make it work. Now, how do I explain to my sister what happened at the Count's manor? Will she react calmly that I want to marry the tyrant's illegitimate child? Ruby thought to herself. Luan entered the girl's room. Is something wrong? Asked Rubina. She didn't understand why Luan had come to her bedroom. The girl had already forgotten about their arrangement. I'm here for what we have to do with you, Luan replied. I remember he's talking about that conversation in the garden now, thought Ruby. Look, let's get some rest, and then we can decide what we'd do next, said the girl, and threw a white sheet over Luan's shoulders. But I'm ready to do it today, assured the girl Luan. Sir Luan! The girl started to speak, but Luan interrupted her. Please call me Louis, starting tonight. Luan didn't understand why the girl was suddenly hesitant. Did she really regret bringing him to her? If I don't marry her, I will lose my protector and may die. I can't let her regret her decision. No matter how, I must make her keep me, Luan thought to himself. Your Grace, whispered Luan, taking a step forward. Ruby kicked Luan to the floor and pinned his arm behind his back. The man howled in pain. He approached me so unexpectedly that an involuntary reflex kicked in. Ran through Ruby's mind. But he seems to be stronger than I thought. I thought he would be soft, but under my hands I can feel strong, dense muscles. If he has a body like that without training, wouldn't he make a nice knight with officious training? That's it, I give up. Let me go, Luan asked. Duchess! You yourself insisted that I come to you tonight, and now you're twisting my arms? Is that what we should be doing now? I told you it's okay. Promise me that if I let you go now, you'll go back to your room, said Ruby. The girl was really beginning to doubt that she had made the right decision in bringing the Count's grandson into her home. No, I will stay here, replied Luan. Then I won't let you go. You don't even have to ask me to do that, said the girl. Ruby noted to herself that Luan was looking at her with the same gaze that he had been drilling her with all evening at that banquet. It was as if he was telling her that he was determined and that he had his reasons for doing so. Luan gently released his hands and pulled the girl to him and kissed her on the lips. I'm not sure I can do that today with the current thoughts in my head, Ruby thought to herself. Feeling no resistance from the girl, Luan laid her on her back. I'll do it all myself so you don't have to worry, said Luamond. Rubina hugged Luan tightly and kissed her passionately on the lips. When Rubina opened her eyes in the morning, Luamond was sleeping soundly beside her. The girl noted to herself that this was the first time she had woken up in bed with someone. Your ladyship, did you sleep well? Asked Luamond as soon as he opened his eyes. Luan decided to prepare a scented bath for the girl. Ruby watched his movement with pleasure. He reminded her of an angel. Luamond lifted the girl in his arms and carried her into the bath. I apologize, but an urgent message has arrived. You have been summoned to the Imperial Palace, said a maid of honor who looked into the room. I will depart right after the meal, so prepare the carriage, asked Ruby. If I'm being summoned to the palace, I assume Cullen already knows about everything, mumbled the girl. I'll go to the Imperial Palace, but you stay here for now. I'll try to get back as soon as possible. When Rubina entered the palace, she immediately sensed the intimidating atmosphere there. Upon seeing the Duchess, the servants immediately started whispering, Here comes my elder sister. It's been a long time since I've seen you. It seems like you have accumulated a lot of news for me. You don't have to worry about my reaction. Just be honest with me. Tell me what you've decided to upset me with. Kalina exclaimed. The Empress asked everyone to step outside. She wanted to have a private conversation with her sister. Well now, you and I are alone, so you can fear nothing now and tell me the whole truth. I'm really curious about what's going on in your life. Ruby decided to tell her sister everything. To Cullen's surprise, she reacted rather calmly. Good, you can marry him. I give you my blessing. You gave me your blessing so calmly. I was told you wanted to use the tyrant's illegitimate son to lure out and destroy all the rebels. Has anything changed? Asked Rubina to her sister. No, nothing has changed, but I will only allow you to marry this man on one condition. Neither I nor the other dukes will attend your wedding, replied Kalina with a smile. I knew it. Nothing has changed. She will even use our wedding for her own selfish purposes. She intends to destroy all dissenters at once. Ruby guessed. Don't feel bad about me not coming to your wedding. You should understand why I'm doing this, said Kalina, noticing her sister's sad face. Once the wedding ceremony is over, the nobles will be busy spreading rumors. They will say that I was enchanted by the tyrant's illegitimate son, and that is why I quarreled with the Empress. Thought Ruby. I'm pretty sure that as soon as 3 years pass, Luan will file for divorce. Right after that, the Empress will accuse him of treason and execute him immediately. But I don't want that. I must somehow prevent that from happening. Cullen, I'm sorry for interfering with your plans and causing trouble, said Ruby. And what are you apologizing for? I always knew you had a weakness for handsome men. You even allowed Duke Feltarg to escape at one time. I knew you liked him for a while, Kalina admitted. And I know you were aware of my plans, but you still chose the tyrant's son as your husband. You bought his good looks, didn't you? Of course I don't like it, but I'm an empress, so I have to behave honorably. I'm sorry to upset you, but it's my decision. I'll be going now. Thanks for the tea, said Ruby, rising from her seat. Where are you running off to? I thought you were staying with me for lunch. It's not like you have to feed the beasts of the north, so why are you leaving? Kalina resented. A butler entered the Empress's chambers and announced that Duke Feltarg had come to see her. From the look of you, you have something to tell me, the Empress remarked. Your Majesty, why did you give them your blessing? Feltarg asked. I don't know what you're talking about now at all, replied Kalina. Your Majesty, please don't pretend. I do not agree with your decision. Why did you allow the bastard son of a tyrant to marry your sister? The Duke asked in an irritated tone. And why are you asking me this? Do you not know the answer to that question? You are my most valuable and capable man. You are loyal to this empire. He, on the other hand, is the illegitimate son of a tyrant and the mistake of a millennium from the House of Scholars. Wouldn't it be better to use and discard someone who is nothing without his looks? Do you think it makes sense to seal the marriage of 2 of the 3 dukes of the empire? Or are you going to go against my will? Your Majesty, you know how hard it is for me to keep from making a scene right now, right? You know that for the past few years I've been searching for my distant relatives. And you know I've been doing all this because I wanted to give up this life, including giving up the title. I never hid from you that I wanted to gain your sister's favor. It was you who forbade me to get close to her. I did so because I don't want to lose a significant figure like you. I have other plans for you, and I'm well aware that if you married my sister, you'd be loyal to her for the rest of your life. Not me. Cullen admitted. By the way, I still hate you for stabbing my sister's shoulder with your sword. Don't you know she was the reason I lost my right eye? I was angry with her, and so I wanted revenge, replied Feltarg. Do I need to explain to you that with her damaged shoulder, she could no longer use a bow, so she went to the dangerous battlefield with a sword, and while she suffered, you were just there beside her smiling sweetly, and as fate would have it, the wound destroyed her body. You know very well yourself that if I hadn't fought back against your sister that day, she would have definitely killed me. Although, wait a minute. Your Majesty, were you counting on me dying that day? Feltarg guessed. All right, I heard you. You're claiming that it was just ordinary self-defense. That's exactly why I don't want you to marry my sister. And I still think you should have let her kill herself. Yes, you should have died that day, replied Kalina. Then why are you letting that creep marry your sister? You must realize he's just using her to save his own skin, Feltarg exclaimed. Kalina opened a small box and took out an open-work shawl. It's a beautiful shawl, isn't it? At one time, this shawl was given to my older sister for her birthday. She kept it in her closet and only took it out a couple of times just to touch it. I talked her into giving it to me. Your sister didn't give you the shawl, you just stole it! Feldhard guessed. He finally realized who the Empress really was. She thought only of herself. The feelings of others were indifferent to her. My relatives must have realized that if my sister liked this shawl, it would seem beautiful to me as well. Every time I saw this shawl, I begged my sister to give it to me. My sister liked this thing so much that she didn't even dare to wear it. So why didn't she want to just give me this shawl? She even got mad when I just touched it. And I didn't steal the thing. She really gave it to me over time without ever wearing it. That's my sister. She's willing to sacrifice a lot for the people she cares about. Are you implying that the bastard son of a tyrant is akin to this shawl? Feldhard clarified. Huh. And you're quick on the uptake, which is to be expected. With a ringing laugh, the Empress said, That's right. I completely fail to see what use this man can be to my sister. You can even try to push pity and steal her heart. It makes no difference to me. One thing I know for sure, when I ask her to kill that bastard, she will honor my request. Come to think of it, Your Majesty never gave me permission to confess or openly show feelings for Duchess Achillean. You have always watched from afar and disposed of anyone who dared to approach her, said Feldhard. Are you really going to sit idly by this time? You've been thorough all along, so why are you going to let it go now? There's a reason for that, isn't there? Tell me. Duke Feldhard, you are indeed very intelligent, and I like it. That is the quality I appreciate in you. I don't have a shred of doubt in my mind that Cullen has already decided to kill Luan by now. I wonder if I'll be pregnant by then, thought Ruby on the way home. When the girl entered the house, the excited servants told her that her guest was missing. He had vanished as if he had never existed. Have his feelings for me faded so quickly? Ruby wondered. I apologize. I was only momentarily distracted. A colleague visited him and stayed in his room for a while. After that, they disappeared. Narrated the maid of honor. The colleague was an official from the Empire. She said that they studied in the same scholar's house. This girl's name is Peony Lauren. She was recently given the title of Baroness. So a woman came to him and he left with her. Ruby summarized. Have you searched the entire building? Rubina asked her servants. The maids answered her that they had been everywhere except the West Wing. Rubina went to the West Wing of the manor. When she opened the library doors, she saw Luan asleep on the floor. I thought so. He's going to go looking for books. Unfortunately, I don't have any serious literature. I'll have to buy some science books, said Ruby. Are you saying that the Empress gave you her blessing for the marriage after all? Clarified the maid of honor. Rubina answered her that this was the case, but it was not worth telling anyone about it yet. Let the information be kept secret for a while. Rubina looked at her sleeping future husband. Should she take him to the bedroom or let him sleep here? The girl really wanted their carefree love to last longer than 3 years. Ruby decided that she would try hard to please the Empress to keep Luan alive. How angry I was after all when I thought he had decided to run away from me. Looking at his sleeping face, I wonder what's the point of all this? Thought the girl, gently stroking Luan's head. This man is not noted for his strength or firmness of mind. So why do I bother about him, since there is nothing else about him but fragile beauty? He felt safe here, so he fell into a sound sleep. I had to bring him from Graham Manor so he wouldn't be worried or nervous. I guess I won't be able to hate him. I would like to point out that I am no longer the fragile girl I was a few years ago. This man will soon be my husband. I'm sure I can protect him. He won't die like my parents did. I also need to find out what kind of coworker came to my house. After researching Luan's background, I learned that he's never been in a relationship with a woman. Maybe she really is just a coworker. And by the way, why is he insisting on a prenup? And why does he want a divorce after 3 years of marriage? What does he intend to do afterward? And why does he need 3 years exactly? Maybe then he wants to run away with Peony Lauren? As soon as Rubina left for the Imperial Palace, negative thoughts immediately came over Luamund. He began to think that the girl had abandoned him, that she wasn't interested in him. A short while later, Luamund was visited by an honor student from the Scholar House, Peony Lauren. "Coming to work this morning, I heard that you were at the Duchess's house. I came to see you because of rumors. They say at work that Duchess Achillean fell before your beauty and snatched you out of the hands of the Count. Is this true?" Peony asked. "It is not so unequivocal. The fact is that the Duchess found out about my problems and just decided to help me," replied Luamund. "And what are you going to do regarding work?" Peony inquired. "I'm going to be on vacation for a while longer, so tell the boss my apologies," said Luamund. "Of course, I'll pass your words on to him. I found out everything I wanted to know, so I'll go. It is not my business. However, I want to ask you not to go too far for an answer. The truth is one, but there are many ways to find out." These words were asked to be passed on by the professor. "Peony, you are a great good girl. I always knew you were the best student in the House of Scholars. Thank you for this advice." Luamund suddenly shouted, grabbing the girl's arm. He always dug too deep, and the answer could really lie on the surface. After Peony left, Luamund went to the library. He wanted to find answers in books. To survive in his past lives, Luamund had read all sorts of novels. They told of cold-blooded emperors, dukes of the northern lands. All of them spent the night with the protagonist and became obsessed with her. Luamund was sure that there was bound to be a story with a completely different plot. Through novels, he hoped to find a way to survive in this world. He didn't want to fall in love with the Duchess. He was sure it wouldn't end well. After flipping through several books, Luamund still didn't find any answers to his questions. Luamund noted to himself that he liked being around the Duchess. He was afraid that with one wrong action, he might push her away from him. Luamund wanted a concrete answer from the Duchess. What did she expect from him? Do I already have feelings for the Duchess? But who am I to her? Luamund thought as he fell asleep. When Luamund woke up, he saw the Duchess beside him. "And how did you sleep on the floor?" asked Ruby. "And what is the Duchess doing here? How long has she been sitting here?" Luamund thought in surprise. "You slept so soundly that I didn't bother to wake you up," said the girl. "Take this." Ruby handed Luamund the marriage contract. "I have done as you wished. Today at the palace I received the Empress's blessing. When 3 years have passed, I'll steal it and hide it somewhere," Ruby thought. "This contract contains all the information regarding our marriage. After the divorce, you will be considered part of the Duchy of Achillean. Even if you remarry, your identity and status will remain untouched," the girl explained. "Of course, after the divorce, you will receive alimony. In return, during those 3 years, you must be faithful to the marriage. Also, you can't count on paternal rights to the children. Read it carefully. You might want to change something." "I won't change anything. I will sign this contract," Luamund replied. "I still recommend that you read the contract carefully. It contains some restrictive conditions. You'll need to adhere to them in the future," insisted Ruby. "I'm sure your ladyship wouldn't put clauses in that contract that would cause me trouble. I believe you," said Luamund, and put his signature at the bottom corner of the contract. Ruby also put her signature. They were now officially considered husband and wife. Luamund felt relieved. He could now not worry about his life. From sheer nervous tension, Luamund fainted. Ruby dragged her newfound husband to their bedroom and laid him on the bed. The doctor told the girl that her spouse had fainted due to severe physical and emotional overexertion. It was difficult for his young body to endure so much. With proper care, he would recover quickly. For me, he prepares a fragrant bath, and he himself sleeps on the floor. Of course, from treating himself like this, the body won't be able to withstand it for long, and I'm sure he's been through a lot living with the Count, thought Ruby. He continued to get worked up even while in my house. I can see him desperately clinging to me, seeking support and asking for help. Right now he reminds me of my sister. As a child, she used to seek my protection just as often. Please save me. I don't want to die, whispered Luan in his sleep. Don't worry, you won't die. I won't let that happen. I will protect you, so don't worry, Ruby promised. Opening his eyes, Luan saw Rubina sleeping beside him. She stayed here to wait for me to wake up? But why is she doing this for me? She is trying in a way that no one else has ever tried, thought Luan. Luan leaned over the girl and scrutinized her. Are you done admiring her? Ruby asked unexpectedly. With that loud breathing and inept movements, you'll be easily caught. Luis, do you want me to tell you how to properly pretend to be asleep? What did you just say? What did you call me? Luan asked. I called you Louis. Why? You asked me to do that yourself. I want you to do the same. I wouldn't mind if you started calling me Ruby, replied the girl. No, I'll call you by your full name, objected Luan. In one of his past lives, Luan had heard Duke Feltarg call the girl Ruby. In that life, there was a romantic relationship between Duke Feltarg and Ruby. To be honest, I don't really like being called Ruby, so I don't mind if you call me by my full name, the girl replied. Ruby, whispered Luan and reached for the girl. He guessed that 3 years would fly by. He wanted to stay with her for the rest of his life. Next to the Duchess, he felt safe. Luan spent 3 days in bed. He had a fever, so the doctor prescribed him bed rest. During this time, the capital spread a rumor that the Duchess fell in love with the tyrant's illegitimate son and spent all 3 days in bed with him. How many rumors can you spread about me? Louis spent all those 3 days in bed with a high fever. Meanwhile, I sat at my desk at work. Rubina was outraged. Rubina wrote her younger sister a letter, but doubted she would read it. Lately, the Empress rarely engaged in state affairs. She was more interested in attending various events. Rubina also learned that Count Graham, having decided that her relationship with the Empress had broken down, had immediately rushed to Kalena to express his indignation. Kalena showed the Count a document authorizing the Duchess of Ashelion to marry his grandson. However, the Empress obliged Ruby to pay a high monetary compensation. A few days later, Earl Graham decided to visit Duchess Ashelion. Despite the arrangement, I am against this marriage. I will not give my sweet Louis to the Duchess, even if the Empress demands it, exclaimed the Count. How tired I am of all this. And I won't give Louis away either. He's not something, thought to herself Ruby. Count Graham, I am grateful to you for raising your grandson to be a decent man. In exchange for authorizing this marriage, I, the Duchess of Ashelion, will give you a generous reward. I will give you a diamond mine in the West. Count Graham looked at the girl in surprise. Everyone knew that the Western Diamond Mine was the most profitable in the Empire. This mine was once given to me by the Empress. When we finally get rid of the rebels, the entire property will become a national treasure, so there's no problem here. Ruby thought to herself. There's no point in giving them such a lucrative business. Don't do it, Luan asked. He was worried that the Duchess's property might be used for rebellion in the future. Don't worry, it's pure nonsense. I can guess what you're worried about, but I assure you everything will be fine, replied Ruby. The Empress only gave her sister a few mines. Dante and Feltarg had gotten much more. Rubina guessed these mines went to her because they could be used for rebellion. It was only in her sister that the Empress had complete confidence. Rubina could see that Luamund was afraid of a rebellion from her grandfather, but she already knew that the Empress never does anything for nothing. Kalena thinks through every move she makes. The Empress is expecting a rebellion from Count Graham. Louis, raise your head. You no longer have anything to do with Count Graham's family. You are now my husband, Duke Ashelion. Sit up straight and look directly at your grandfather, Ruby whispered in her husband's ear. Luman complied with his consort's command. He looked at his grandfather with a firm, confident gaze. All right, if the Duchess loves her consort so much, how can I interfere with the newlyweds' love? Let us forget old grudges and seal this friendship between our families by this marriage, exclaimed the Earl. Count Graham decided that this marriage would not prevent him from organizing a riot. He even began to consider using the Duchess and his grandson. The Earl signed a document authorizing the marriage between the two. Even if the rebellion fails, then Louis can be used to hide in the shadow of the ducal family of Achillean. The Earl decided to himself, "It seems to me that grandfather is even glad to get rid of me. He easily traded me for the diamond mine. Now, only the Duchess is left by my side." Luan thought wistfully. If my assumptions are correct, the Count is only the tail of the planned rebellion. The head and body are completely different people. They most likely want to put Louis on the throne since he has a blood connection to the past emperor, thought Ruby. The only thing that surprises me is the ease with which the Count changed his plans. It's disadvantageous for him to marry us amid the rebellion, but for a good reward, he put the rebellion on the back burner. The people who want to make Louis emperor don't respect him at all. He is nothing but a scarecrow to them, a puppet that is easy to control. If they had even the slightest respect for Louis, they would behave very differently. Duchess, would you step out for a few minutes? I need to speak to my grandson. You're patronizing him enough as it is. This is a family conversation, so you'd better step outside, asked the Count. You're free to go. Everything will be fine, replied Luan to his spouse's mute question. I'll be around, so if you need me, call me, said Rubina and left the room. Rubina was left standing outside the door. She wondered what her husband would talk to his grandfather about. I am no longer Graham, and have nothing to do with your family, so don't visit me or come to this house, said Luan. Ruby decided to go back to her office. She could see that her spouse was determined. He didn't need her help. The girl saw Duke Feldharg walking towards her house with a firm step and a determined face. What does he want with me? I don't like to be bored, Rubina thought irritably, noticing the girl Feldharg called her by name. Feldharg, long time no see, Rubina exclaimed with a happy smile on her face. You're in quite a good mood. Apparently your interaction with the Count went very well, Feldharg remarked. Of course it went well. I gave him possession of the diamond mine, replied the girl. Why did you do that? Feldharg hissed angrily through his teeth. What's the problem? Ruby asked, surprised. She had always thought Feldharg wasn't interested in money. Why was he reacting this way? You're a problem, and the fact that you're getting married is also a problem. All these problems are destroying me from the inside, and unfortunately it can't be solved by just wishing. It would be nice if you noticed it at least now. Feldharg replied. What is he talking about? Ruby thought in surprise. There is something I have to do. I will help you as much as I can, and I see that you don't notice my words and hints at all. You don't know what I'm talking about right now. Feldharg went on to say. Is he trying to say something about my sister right now? If I remember correctly, she is currently busy building the Eastern Dam. Most of the Empire's funds have been spent on it. Feldharg is helping her with the construction, thought Ruby. Is he insinuating that my sister is completely unwilling to listen to his advice? Maybe he wants me to influence her in some way? What about the House of Scholars? Maybe one of them has been made an advisor by the Empress? Duke Feldharg holds the most power of the 3 duchies of the Empire. He is deeply involved in state affairs and has loyal vassals, along with the support of the Western Territory. His business is steadily growing. Maybe Cullen has decided to shut him out because she fears he will eventually become too powerful and want to rebel against her. But it would be better for her to marry him and have the support of his men. What is going on between them? And what do you think about that? Ruby asked. She was completely sure of her guess, but unfortunately misunderstood everything. Are you asking for my opinion on this? Feldharg clarified. If you're so interested, I'll explain everything in more detail now, whispered Feldharg, leaning over the girl. Suddenly, someone's masculine hand appeared between Feldharg and Ruby's faces. Luan pressed his spouse against him. Is your conversation with the Count already over? Rubina asked her husband. Luan hid his spouse behind his back. He looked angrily at Feldharg. And what are you doing now? Feldharg asked. I want to ask you the same thing, Duke Feltarg. And in looks, Louis is absolutely as good as Feltarg, Rubina remarked to herself. Rubina, stay away from that man, asked Luamund. Louis, calm down. I think there has been some misunderstanding. Rubina pressed her spouse against you and gently stroked his head. She was pleased that he had decided to protect her. I didn't expect this pup to be your type, Feltarg exclaimed. Try to watch your tongue. He's my husband. I would like you to show him the proper respect, said Ruby. All the details are settled. We have signed the marriage contract. The Empress has given us her blessing. Just recently, we finished our discussion with Earl Graham. All that remains is the marriage ceremony. Are you telling me about your marriage now? Feltarg asked irritably. Ruby, let's get out of here already, said Luamund and took his consort in his arms. Suddenly, Rubina grabbed Luamund by the neck and started choking her. Her reflexes are not rusty after all. Feltarg rejoiced. Oh, Louis, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, Ruby exclaimed and yanked her hand away. Luamund assured her that he was fine. He held no grudges against her. Luamund guessed that the girl had involuntarily grabbed him by the throat as he lifted her up in his arms too suddenly. Feltarg, I will invite you to my wedding, but you are unlikely to come, am I right? Nevertheless, I will expect a gift from you, shouted the girl and waved her buddy's hand. Feltarg received a letter from the Empress. Kalena wrote that she didn't expect the Duke to be so eager to participate in the construction of the Eastern Dam. In her letter, Kalena admitted that Ruby had asked her to make Feltarg the chief superintendent of the construction. The Empress also promised that she would name the dam after the Duke. From that day forward, Feltarg was to turn in an account for the construction of the waterway. Damn it, Ruby, you got it wrong again! What does this have to do with the Eastern Dam? Feltarg hissed irritably. He crumpled up the Empress's letter with a sharp movement. From today, we will be actively preparing for the wedding. The date will be set for us by the Imperial Court. We will be assisted by servants in everything, so we shouldn't worry too much, said Rubina to her husband. My office is in the western part of the mansion. Our bedroom is in the center. You can use the eastern part for your own purposes. This year, I will allocate you a small amount of money for personal spending, but next year that amount will be doubled. If you need a large amount of money unexpectedly, just tell me. The amount specified in the contract is already quite large. With this kind of money, I'll be able to realize all my plans. For starters, I will overthrow that bastard Duke Feltarg. Luamund thought to himself, I will buy things that will become popular in the future. I will also support artists who are sure to succeed, and I will seize the wealth that Feltarg has accumulated in my previous lives. When I have enough money, I will buy back Ruby's diamond mine from my grandfather. A wedding in 3 weeks already! But we won't have time to prepare, will we? The Empress's maid of honor exclaimed. She had decided to stay at Rubina's house as the head maid. You don't need to worry about that. I've already told you that I don't need a lavish celebration. Keep things as simple as possible. Just get the priest and we'll exchange rings in front of him, Ruby suggested. But you're a duchess. You can't have a modest wedding. The aristocrats won't understand you. Ask your sister to change the date of your wedding, the eldest maid exclaimed. What's the point of me asking to change the date? My sister will do everything out of spite anyway. She doesn't think my wedding is real. She thinks I'm just playing family. She wishes my marriage would end as soon as possible, thought Ruby. But at this point, I can't change anything yet, so I'll have to accept it. 3 weeks? But that's not long, is it? Luamund exclaimed. Thank you, Luamund-san. Your reaction is different from the Duchess, who is not interested in wedding preparations at all, the headmaid complained. I know where you can buy lilies in bulk. Those flowers are a symbol of family. And by the way, don't display the distinctive signs of the Graham family, Luamund asked. Ruby was pleased that Luamond had found common ground with Madame Ramon's, the head maid. Now there was no need to worry about the upcoming celebration. Luamond and Madame Ramon went to the market to buy flowers. Luamond had participated in decorating weddings several times in his previous lives, but this was his first wedding, and with the person he loved, so he wanted to do everything in the best possible way. Luan tried to keep his anxious thoughts away, but he still felt uneasy. Luan really hoped that all his fears and worries were in vain. Ruby went to the local inn. "I propose that you make bets. Who do you think will wear the wedding dress at the Duchess's wedding? That illegitimate degenerate who is prettier than many women, or still the Duchess?" shouted the bartender. Those present in the inn cheerfully supported the bartender. "Would you like to place a bet too?" asked the bartender to Rubina. He had no idea that he was facing the Duchess of Ashelion. "I'll leave it up to the Duchess," said a man in a black cloak who approached and tossed the bartender a gold coin. "What's with all the tattling?" Ruby asked, irritated. She took the man by the arm and led him out of the inn. "And what's that outfit you're wearing?" asked Rubina. "But you're the one who told me to hide my identity," resented Dante. "Okay, let's not dwell on that. Let's find a more private place and talk," suggested Ruby. "Look, you saw that I bet on you, so make sure you wear a wedding dress so I can make some money," asked Dante. "By the way, I didn't come to you empty-handed. I carried information that you need to know if you want your wedding to be a success." Ruby noted to herself that lately when she was around Feltarg and Dante, she was getting an uneasy feeling. She was beginning to feel as if someone invisible had a dagger to her throat. She couldn't explain the feeling. Looking at Dante, the girl felt a shiver in her whole body. But why was this happening? He had never posed a danger to her. "I recently heard a rumor that the rebels have decided to prevent your wedding. Looks like they've got another extremist," Dante whispered. "I'm beginning to think our Empress's position is getting rather precarious. I think she needs to get married and have an heir. In fact, I always thought that of all our company, I would be the first to marry. But for some reason, it's you who's getting married." "And why should you be the first to marry and not Duke Feltarg?" Ruby asked. Hearing the girl's words, Dante laughed out loud. "You know how to joke after all," said Dante, wiping away the tears that had come out. "As a wedding present, I promise you that I'll protect your husband when you're not in the capital. No, I think I'll refuse. Think of some other gift." Ruby replied. Dante's offer was very tempting, but she didn't want to be indebted to him. On top of that, he was loyal to the Empress, and Rubina wanted to hide certain aspects of her life from her sister. "All right, do as you please," Dante said in a hurt voice and strode away. Ruby watched Dante carefully as he walked away. Even though she had known him for years, he was still a mystery to her. When the girl returned to the capital, she met Dante at one of the banquets. That day, he confessed to her that he would gladly take her in marriage if she were an empress. "You see, I believe that my life partner should be the finest woman," Dante confessed that day. "And why not make the current empress my consort?" Looking at Dante, Ruby was firmly convinced that he was absolutely no match for her sister. He was cunning and disingenuous. Next to Kalina, Rubina saw a reliable and malleable man. She thought Feltarg was perfect for her sister. But did the Empress think so?